Welcome to Raging Bullets, a DC Comics fan podcast, episode 716.
From the sleepy suburbs of Cleveland, Ohio, there are assembled the world's two greatest podcast hosts, created from the cosmic legends of the universe. Sean Whalen.
Welcome to Raging Bullets, a DC Comics fan podcast. I'm a big fan of variant colors. My love for Batman is that stuff. Let's talk some comics.
And Jim Segulin.
How's it going, eh? You know me and Superman. I'm really loving what they're doing. Raging Bullets is a spoiler podcast.
Their mission, to discuss DC comics in books, movies, and television several times a month in 1 to 3 hour episodes. And to serve all mankind.
Outstanding!
Welcome to Raging Bullets. I'm Sean Whalen, drnorge, and I'm joined as always by the returning co-host, Jim, the sensei of the Whatnot Segulin.
How's it going, eh?
Happy 2024, everybody. We are back this episode, and we're talking about Superman issue number 10 and Action Comics 1061. We also do a Speeding Bullets segment where we talk a little bit briefly about some of the DC movies that have been released recently, including the animated feature and Aquaman, of course. We are sponsored, as always, by DCB Service and InStockTrades.com. Mr. Segulin, what is going on over at DCBService.com?
We have Absolute Batman Arkham Asylum hardcover, 50% off, only $50. And we have Absolute Batman The Dark Knight, The Master Race hardcover, 40% off, only $75. So thank you, DCBS.
Over at InStockTrades.com, I am a huge fan of their deals of the week. This is where I go to find anything that I'm missing across comics, and knowing that I can get them at 50% off. Batman The Abyss, it's trade paperback volume 6, is $16.99 regularly. It's 50% off there for only $8.50. Thank you, DCB Service and InStockTrades.com for continuing to support our show. Mr. Segulin, what kind of a podcast are we?
I don't know. I've kind of forgotten. It's been too long. Oh, wait. Raging Bullets is a spoiler podcast. We go in depth into plot lines, story twists, and whatnot of the comics we're discussing on today's show. So if you haven't read the books, you may want to come back later so you can better enjoy the show.
Let's talk some comics.
You won't get away from me this time, Buster.
Well, Jim, for us, I think on the show, this may be one of our, longest hiatuses. I don't know how it compares to, you had a pretty severe injury a while back, but we've, as a show, we've kind of kept on trucking, and you've recorded in like the craziest of places in order to keep us going. But you've had some stuff going on, so I want to take a few moments for a chance for you maybe to give a little update. And we got some good news, which is it's not, first of all, welcome back, and you want to share like kind of what's been going on.
Yeah, we've got some good news. We talked about a little bit before, and then when we started having delays, well, my dad has been in and out of the hospital 7 times since October. So past 2 months. You know, he's been 2-3 months. He's been in and out of the hospital 7 times. And what started off as a serious heart issue turned into complications from the heart stuff with his blood pressure, then adding on to it infections, which was just ripping his insides apart, then to other more further complications with fluid retention, blood pressure. Now, when you have, for those who don't know, when you have a heart issue, when you're high risk for heart attack, high risk for stroke, retaining fluid is a very dangerous thing. And Dad was retaining fluid on his heart and lungs, as well as like his feet just looked like 2 giant hams. And his toes were round as opposed to elongated, like toes normally supposed to look. So we had a lot of complications going on with getting that taken care of. And then watching his blood pressure. His blood pressure would be too low for the drugs to take out to remove the fluids. So they had to give him a medicine to raise his blood pressure so that he could take it's called Lasix, drug to reduce the fluid. But then they had to monitor his kidneys because the medicine that raises the blood pressure can also damage the kidneys. So he was going through multiple stuff where in the morning, okay, let's run these tests. Okay, yeah, he can have these meds. Okay, he can't have these meds today. And it got to the point where, again, it was he was in the hospital multiple days, and then when you're in the hospital multiple days, that also takes away strength. So here's my dad, 80 plus years old, laying around, so all his strength is going away. So we had to do physical therapy, but you have to watch what physical therapy, because again, he is high risk for a heart, and we're still on track, hopefully, to kind of get a valve replacement. So his one valve in his heart has to get replaced. So we've got all these juggling things going on, and it got to the point where I just told Sean I can't keep up with the show I had, because I still had to work full time. I couldn't get time off from work, so I'm still working full time, and I needed to take time to take care of Dad. Because in Ohio, it's me and my sister. Here, Brother Bill lives in Jersey. Brother Dave lives over in Kansas, and they swung by and saw Dad and call and talk, and when they can. But it's Mary and I are the primaries on this. So so unfortunately, the show had to kind of I had to step away from the show for a little bit.
Let me speak to that a little bit. This is supposed to be fun, and it is fun. I mean, that's what this is. And it's hopefully for people listening to this as much as us. Podcasts are supposed to be like a therapeutic kind of thing. We don't do this as a moneymaker. This is meant to be hanging out with friends, meaning all of you and each other, to talk about this stuff that we love. So that's the nice part about right now is you were the one that said, "Hey, I'm ready to record," it's like, which gets me excited. Yeah.
Well, that's the good news, because Dad is home now, and he's been home for a little bit. He's very stable. His feet look normal. He's moving around the house, relatively unassisted. Yeah. He still needs to use a walker, unfortunately, and he hates that. And he hates the fact that he needs help, sometimes, taking care of, like, getting dressed and, putting socks on and things like that. He hates the fact that he needs my help for that. And it's, Dad, he's a very independent guy. And he was doing all this stuff before all this craziness happened. So we're trying to work to get back to a point where we can, where he'll be back to his old self, where he's doing everything himself. And we're seeing lights at the end of the tunnel, and it's not a train coming at us. We're seeing just how, he's moving around the house. He's getting in and out of the car. He's showering. He's doing all types of stuff that, when you and I think about, or even people listening probably think about it, you don't think second nature of it. Well, with my dad, it's a struggle. And he's getting to the point where he's doing this stuff himself. And it was funny because even he was saying, "Hey, when are you going to start recording again?" I'm like, "Well, Sean and I are talking about it." "Oh, good." Dad always wanted me to keep recording. Even throughout when he was staying in the hospital, he wanted me to keep recording. But I'm like, "Don't worry, Dad. Sean and I talked about it. We're good." "Oh, okay. But you should make sure you do that," because he never wanted me to stop doing something I love to help him. That's his first and foremost rule. But and it's one of those things, and so we're back. Yay!
Well, a hiatus isn't, and let's be clear, a hiatus isn't a cancellation of the show. It's because of life, we need a little break, and that's what that is. So I mean, it's some of that stuff's just very, very normal to do, and you come back more excited to do it because you. In your case, we've got some really good news right now. Dad's heading, down in the right direction. So that's awesome news. For people listening to this too, one of the pieces when it comes to Jim's dad and where, he's a part of actually the tradition of the show behind the scenes in a way that you don't understand. Anytime we've ever talked one of the movies for DC, you and I go to, or even we've done some Marvel movies on this show just as, for fun, as a pop culture and whatnot. We've always met first, since your dad's been living with you, with your dad. Your dad goes with us to dinner, and then you and I go to the movie. So it's interesting. Like Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom, I think, is one of the first ones since we've been doing this podcast that you and I didn't see together. Am I right on that?
First DC one, maybe, yeah.
That's what I mean. Yeah, the
Wonder Woman one that came out on Christmas.
Oh, well, that was during the COVID time anyway, where everything was released digitally.
So it doesn't really count.
Yeah, I wasn't counting that, but yes, you're right. The Wonder Woman one we did not see in the theater together.
But anything that was available in the theater, DC movies, we would see it together.
I did see Wonder Woman in the theater as well, but you're right. That was during the weird time where like seeing people was kind of a thing, and even going to the movie theater was nobody sat next to each other. It was a significant distance between people if you would go to the theater back then. Did you see Lost Kingdom?
I have not even seen Lost Kingdom yet. I don't know if it's still in the movie theaters. If it is, I do want to see it in the theaters.
It is. It is still in the theater.
Yeah. And it is one of those things where now I think I'm comfortable enough where I could leave Dad here by himself for a couple hours and catch a movie. I just haven't been able to, because again, this past weekend Cleveland got hit with some snow. We're dealing with that, and we still got doctor appointments that I still got to take Dad to, so all that fun stuff. But though I'm hoping I can catch it still in the theater, because I do want to see it on the big screen.
So the movie itself, I guess, production cost wise, and please know I'm pulling this from the internet, so I don't know how accurate all this is, but it looks like the film cost $205 million to make. The marketing budget was probably around 100 to 150 million, so the site that I'm looking at says that it needs between 305 to 355 to break even, which superhero movies have not been doing. I mean, it kind of this year has been terrible. This looks like one of the ones that's the exception, in the sense that this isn't what you want movies to do, but at least this one, it looks like it's crossed the worldwide total now of 382 million, which, as of today, and I'm pulling this from Wikipedia, that part from Wikipedia, and then I pulled the production cost from another site. But this was a movie, like, first week, the news was terrible. But it seems to keep generating viewership, which you want a movie to do anyway in theaters. But with the streaming media, it's it's unusual that a movie would keep continuing to add to its box office total, and as we're trying to navigate this current market. What I don't know is, so in this case, that's what it's done in the box office. I don't know how they factor in digital sales, streaming sales and things like that on top of that. Do they factor that at all? Because this movie is one that, like, it's the little movie that could, just in the sense that it kept coming back. I don't know nowadays what a metric is for a successful movie. Unless it's like a Barbie or Oppenheimer kind of thing where that was, like this rare occurrence that happened. Or the Taylor Swift movie even, where it was like that cost next to nothing to make, did gangbusters in theater. So I don't know what today's movies have to make in order to have the box office total and whatever they make via streaming and sales afterwards be something where it's a successful movie. That's what we're navigating. I'll say this about the movie, though. If you're listening to this, you're obviously a DC fan. Go see it. If you liked the first movie, there's zero reason to avoid this film. It is more of what you loved in the first film. Is it as good as the first movie? To me, the first movie was so mind-blowingly cool, just because I didn't know what to expect out of it. It's hard to meet that. But it's a great buddy cop movie between him and Orm. Amber Heard, who has got a lot of controversy surrounding her and all that, I thought she was great in it. It was a really fun movie. It's a great ride. It's what you want from a sequel to a great superhero movie. So if you liked the first Aquaman, you're going to like this one. If you didn't like the first Aquaman, this won't make you a believer. So, I'll say that. If you didn't like the first one, the second one's not going to make you go, wow, now I like it. But it is for anybody, and I know there's a big part of our audience out there, because the first movie did very, very well, who enjoyed the first movie. If you haven't seen this, don't let any of the outside nonsense cloud you on this one. A lot of people go into making these movies. Go see it and support it, because it's a great ride. And it's a great movie for right now, to the point of it's cold out, depending on where you live. And it's a good time to be in, maybe seeing a movie. This is one to go see. It's definitely worth seeing. The other movie I want to shout out that came out during our hiatus is Justice League Crisis on Infinite Earths Part 1. I believe this is supposed to be a 3-part series. The first part of this is spectacular. It matches the density of the original 12 issues, but what it does is it's a retelling of the story, modernizing it. And I want to be careful in saying that, because it has the right balance of classic DC sprinkled throughout, because it encapsulates the idea of multiple Earths. It does homages to the regular DC universe. It does homages to the animated DC universe. There's a particularly cool sequence with Jon Stewart, Green Lantern, and Hawkwoman, for example, or Hawkgirl, however you want to look at it. Where it's clearly a wink and a nod to people who have been a big fan of the animated series. They have all the right feels in the right place. One of the favorite characters that I saw that was in there, I'm a big fan of the classic Dr. Midnight from Justice Society. The character makes an appearance. When I say an appearance, there's so many like cameos in this thing between characters from different worlds that they brought in. It has everything that you expect from Crisis on Infinite Earths. This is very much a Flash movie, which if you understand any of the original Crisis story, there's a reason for that. The Flash is used as a storytelling device. This is clearly a version, a telling of Crisis. I actually liked that because it gave you, I think, all of the right density beats that you'd expect from Crisis, but taking into account that a lot of time has passed since that story was originally told, and there's a way to tell it now to be inviting to classic people who've read and loved the series, and also be accessible to people that are just getting exposed to the DCU. Whether you're a longtime fan of the DC animated movies, regular films, TV series like the CW, or just jumping on for the first time. It's accessible right from the get-go. I loved it. It ends in a cliffhanger, as one would expect, but yet had a very satisfying full movie arc. You know, it's one of those where part one ends and there's an ending, but like you immediately want to watch part two because of where it leaves you, if that makes sense. Yep. This is one, do not miss this. If you dismiss animated movies and you're kind of like, I don't know, it's going to be like some watered down version. No, this is good. One of the things they do at the end that I think is really cool too is they do a nice little tribute to George Perez. And I thought that, considering the fact that, he had such a pivotal role in the art of, and his past, I thought that was a cool piece. But multiple versions of the same characters appear or are mentioned in ways that make a lot of sense for a Crisis type story. And it feels fresh all the way through. Like, I didn't feel like I was doing a read along with the original book. I felt like they really understood the importance of all the right story beats from the source material and understood how to make it work in a modern animated film. And there was nothing where I was like, why did you do that? There were surprises in it in the right ways, and it just all worked and came together. So please, I don't think you've had a chance to watch this, am I right?
Yeah, I have not had a chance to get it.
Yeah, so this is one that I'm just going to tell you in particular, you're going to eat this one up. This is one of the better animated releases of the ones that have come out. This is one, honestly, I wish I could see in the theater. I would have liked to have seen this on the big screen, just because it has that big screen animated feel, because of the nature of the scope of the story. It's just one of those pieces. It's a great, if you are a Flash fan, I want to be very clear on this, this is a great Flash story. That's not to say that the other characters aren't in there and they aren't prominent. They are. It's also a very cool Amazo story, which is kind of cool. So,
do we know if it's available on Max?
Oh, I don't know. Like I do with all the animated releases, and I have Max, but let me look. Hang on. Yeah, I just checked. It's not on Max yet, but I'm sure that's going to be like, where is it going to debut? Max, right? I mean, that's their streaming medium. So it's not available yet on Max. It's a great question. I'm glad you asked that. I bought it ahead of time digitally on iTunes. I've done that with all of them. Just so I've got, at this point, it's that collector's mentality of where I've got to have them. Also, it's like if I ever decide to not have my Max streaming, I want my JLA. These animated films have been great.
Like a human helicopter, the Flash rotates his body, rising faster, faster!
Our first discussion this episode is going to be of Action Comics 1061. This is part of the Superman Superstars initiative. The writer is Jason Aaron's. The artist is John Timms. Also supported by Rex Locus and Dave Sharp. And apologies for not having the rest of the creative team. It's been hard to find them. They're not actually in the book, which is unusual. So I kind of did some searching around the internet to try and figure this out. Shout out to anybody who helped create this particular book, because this is part of this really cool new Superman Superstars initiative. I didn't realize this is Jason Aaron's first time writing Superman. I remember Jason Aaron, being at DC for quite some time. A lot of his work being at Vertigo. But I didn't realize he never got a chance to touch Superman. So, Jim, this is your first foray back to, and we haven't actually talked about Superman on the show in quite some time before the hiatus. So that was one of the reasons why I thought in coming back, let's make this the time that we talk about Superman. So Action Comics out of the starting gate, 1061, brand new creative team, brand new arc. What do you think about this Bizarro story?
Well, I'm digging it. I'm normally not a big Bizarro fan, I'll be honest with you. We did have the one version that was with the Outsiders that got intelligent, and the character started developing. Like, okay, I'm liking this Bizarro, and then they get rid of him. I'm like, oh, dang it, because with the Bizarro, I'm so very happy. Bizarro, remembering, and I always got in my head, think, okay, he's talking opposites. Very, very happy. He's not happy. He's sad. He's not forget. Okay, so he forgot why he's there. He forgot all his people. Okay, so and sometimes I do get a little confused. And this was so when he first hits Gen World and all that, I'm like, okay, this is kind of interesting. And what's he doing there with magic? Because again, Superman is anti-magic. That means magic will be good for Bizarro, and that was something I really liked. That kind of played off in this, that what hurts Superman helps Bizarro. So right there we're seeing once he hits the world of magicians where they throw magic at him thinking that'll stop him. No, all you did just make him super powerful. I'm like, oh, that's kind of cool.
And intelligent in a different sort of way.
Yeah.
He really started clicking with that. It was very interesting to see magic have this impact on Bizarro. Bizarro can be very, very... The stronger Bizarro gets, and actually when you add in intelligence, the more intelligent he gets, the scarier he gets. This has done a really good job, and this has been something that we'll talk about this also in the Superman run. This has been something that's been really great, is the way that we've gotten to the core of who Superman is, and Superman's relationship with his family, and just who Clark is as a person in this timeline with Superman right now. But we're also having villains that are escalating. And that's important to do because Superman's becoming more experienced, right? And Superman, and as happens over time, Superman becomes more powerful, not just because of the fact that his powers have increased, but his understanding of how to use his powers have increased. You've got to up the game then of the villains. It's kind of a natural piece. It actually matches the whole thing that's often the criticism about superheroes and vigilantes in general. It's like, do they kind of cause some of the problem? Yep. And you kind of get that point. But this is one of those stories where it takes Bizarro, and you're right. Sometimes it is hard to identify with Bizarro as a character because the character seems to be retweaked and rebooted, and his origin seems to be retold so many times it's hard to get a hand. He's almost got the Hawkman thing going on, right?
Yeah.
So I kind of get that, where it's like, okay, who and what exactly is Bizarro? This story also does a really cool thing of, setting up the idea that maybe there's been multiple Bizarros all along. And this is just one of them, which is an interesting sort of tweak on that, where, Superman's got this familiarity with them. They have met before, but there have been, this concept of multiple Bizarros. And I get that kind of thing as well. This artwork is stunning. And in particular, I'm looking at the picture in the opening with Gemworld and the floating cities. I love fantastical worlds. And they have to be these worlds where, because it's magical, you're like, there's a certain amount of it where you're like, I want to go there, but there's also this sense of danger because of the magic and the creatures and things like that, that you find it's a healthy balance of, I want to see all of this, but I want to go with somebody who can shoot a dragon out of the sky. Because it's pretty critical for me.
Yeah,
and this has that, the color scheme and just how everything looks. I play a lot of video games, and role-playing games are my jam. So when I see stuff like this, I'm like, this is already made. Why is there not a DC role-playing game where I can go to Gemworld? Or, I can go to Skartaris and go to places like this and be able to take advantage of seeing these worlds and living and moving through them and interacting with them in that capacity. Because DC's got these kind of locales to do stuff like this. And that's something that this book's doing right, in that it's taking you to these magical worlds and making you feel like Bizarro's there. And it's almost like, all right, I kind of understand what it's like to be here with Bizarro. Because he's seeing this through his eyes. I love how the magicians come through. He's just really content to keep going, and he's trying to find his own answers, which is very interesting with Bizarro. He's a storm, right? At his best. I didn't realize you weren't a Bizarro fan. I know you're a huge Superman fan, so we've never really had this conversation before. This really is one of the Superman villains that don't fall on your top 10 list, right?
Yeah. And again, I've got nothing against Bizarro per se, but I just, for whatever reason, every Bizarro story I've never really had like, oh, this is wonderful. Again, it always a lot of times did confuse me when I'm reading it and getting the groove of it. And I was like, I always thought the character was kind of limited on what kind of nastiness and what kind of stuff they could do with him. So it's, again, so seeing what they're doing here, I'm like, oh, okay, this is kind of cool. Just like, as I said, when he was running with the Outsiders, seeing the character growth and the development and all that, I'm like, okay, I'm digging that Bizarro. I like that one. Because that was, again, about the growth of the character, what they can do. He always seemed kind of like limited on where they could take the guy. Because they really couldn't take him to a nasty, evil point, and they never made him really a good guy. A lot of times in the Bizarro stories, he does have a happy ending, in that Superman gets him home. Superman understands, hey, he's just lost, get him home and all that. I'm like, okay, it's a nice story. It's a nice Superman story. You see the Big Blue solving a problem other than punching something. So it was good in that way, but for me, always the character would come in, and it's funny because even in this issue, they talk about that when they're in Bebo's bar, like, oh, it's just Bizarro. Yep. Big Soups will punch him a couple times and beyond, and that's always been my mindset with the character. So again, another reason why I love this issue was because exactly the stuff that I was always thinking, they show the regular everyday people thinking that as well.
Yeah.
So I was like, so again, multiple coolness on this issue. And we got to clarify something because I know someone will call us out on this. They're not actually on Gemworld. They're on Xerox, the Sorcerer's World. But there are temples from Gemworld. There's the swamps with the lizard men from Skartaris and all that stuff. So I threw out earlier that he comes to Gemworld. It's not actually Gemworld he's on. He's on the Sorcerer's World. But it has all these other factions of the magical universe that is DC in one location. So just want to clarify that. So people don't say, oh, Jim, you mistake. Yes.
No, and actually you're 100% correct. It's got elements that are typical in those worlds because of the fact that we've got magicians that are there from the worlds that we were referencing. That's actually, I'm glad you're bringing that up. To the point, I love DC's fantasy side. I will admit that we don't get to see much of it. So it's an area that I love. I also feel like I'm not an expert in, but I always enjoy it. Are you we've done some things like Amethyst and stuff like that on the show. Are you a fan of DC's fantasy world? Warlord we've done on the show, variations of it at least. Is that something you enjoy, or where do you kind of fall with that kind of stuff? Because we get to see it here, and it's used as kind of a backdrop to explain how Bizarro, who has lost his own world, goes to this Xerox world for the purpose of basically trying to, I don't know if it's plotting revenge or trying to make sense of some form of new direction for himself, because he's lost everything, right? He doesn't have his planet anymore. So he's angry. And because, he's basically saying, is Bizarro am so very happy? No, he's angry. I mean, there's hatred that's there, which comes out much later in the issue. But he hates Superman. He resents Superman, I think, because Superman has everything that he wanted. He's truly now this antithesis of Superman. If Superman's good, he's evil. Yes. And he's embracing the fact that he is a true antithesis of Superman as he's evolved in this particular issue, which we aren't used to seeing with Bizarro. He's more like this dumb, misunderstood brute who at the end, it becomes kind of endearing when Superman kind of manages to reach, the heart of Bizarro. Here we're seeing it because of circumstance. Even if you believe that that's who Bizarro's always been, that at his core he was this good-hearted creature, at the end of the day, this is a Bizarro who's lost everything. So what has that done to this Bizarro? And to see like these magical worlds through his eyes is kind of cool. But back to my original question. What do you like the fantasy aspect of DC's universes? Is it something do you find that refreshing when you get to those, or is it something where you're kind of like, it's all right?
See, I like the DC. I like the fantasy thing, but the interesting thing about it is I read the stories. I'm like, oh, that's kind of cool. That's neat. Yeah. But I never go back and pursue it. I never go back and read the back issues of like Gem World or Warlord. Now, for example, when we were talking Amethyst, I thought that was a really cool story. But I never went back and reread the previous stuff. And when we talked that Warlord series at one time, I never went back and watched reread the previous Warlord stuff. So it's something that when it's in front of me, I like it and I'm into it, but I don't go back and do research. Like the Flash stuff, I went back and reread a bunch of old Flash stuff. The Greens, constantly kept going back and reading Green Arrow and Green Lantern. Going back and reading the older stuff. Some of the Justice League stuff, the JSA stuff, big time. Went back and dove heavy into reading JSA stuff. Legion, went back, read a bunch of the Legion stuff whenever we were reading the current stuff. It got me excited to reread the original stuff. I never on any of the fantasy stuff did that. Same thing like with there was a period with Swamp Thing where I was going back and reading some of the original Swamp Things. It was kind of neat, and I was enjoying it, but I never really locked in 100% like I did on the other stuff. So it's, the fantasy magic aspect of, DC does have me interested, and I will enjoy it, but I'm not one of those diehard locked in, gotta read this stuff.
I was never either. Warlord was always a character that fascinated me. I went back, so we read Warlord for the show. I read Broken issues growing up because it ran from like 75 until 89. And during those years, I didn't have much of a budget. Warlord, I found more from, like crossovers or things like that, because he would make an appearance in there. I believe he was in a couple of Brave and the Bold issues as well, too, with Batman, which makes a ton of sense just because that was kind of their book to introduce you to different characters. But I do remember Warlord and crossovers. If it wasn't Brave and the Bold, certainly the character appeared in other books, and I read him that way. When we read it on the show, I had already been seeking out because of Mike Grell. I love the artwork of Mike Grell. And I sought out Warlord for that reason. Warlord I've read a lot of. I have not read all of it yet, but I've read a lot of it. It's well worth seeking out if you're interested in DC's fantasy world at all. Just if you like Mike Grell at all, you have to seek that out. Mike Grell's artwork is fantastic. And Mike Grell's storytelling is also fantastic, but I am a huge fan of Mike Grell's art. I don't mean to diminish his storytelling by saying it that way. It's just the draw for me at first was there was always something captivating to that artwork that drew me into then, wow, on top of this has got like a really cool story. So I always liked the story of Travis Morgan, and he's a character. Out of the fantasy realm, that's the most. Amethyst is a lot more of what you're saying, where anytime the characters appeared, or if they've done miniseries and things like that, or these reboots that they've done during our tenure of doing this podcast, I've always enjoyed the character. And it's always been one that I've wanted to go back and read more of. I just never have had the time to go back and do it. And there's so many things I want to go back and read. I have not had the chance to do that with Amethyst, but I do love these fantastical worlds like that. And thank you for correcting our faux pas before. Actually, it was more mine than yours. I was so caught up on the artwork that I wasn't processing the fact that we're actually on Xerox. but the makings of Xerox is obviously influenced heavily by the fact of all of these Magic World visitors from all of these magical places that are coming there. And I like the way that they incorporated kind of a melting pot of DC's fantastical worlds because this is a hub, showing more so what Bizarro's pulling from. Bizarro's pulling from some of the heaviest magic users in DC that we didn't really know about before this, at least as far as I know.
It's funny because I'm sitting there, and again, there's multiple. This artwork is beautiful. I love this, but the one scene that I'm now really focused on is when Bizarro's attacking the wizards, and they're pouring on the magic, and he's like, Superman loved magic so much, so Bizarro come to show that me love magic even less. I think Bizarro came to this world hoping they'd kill him. Because he's like, Superman hates magic, so he came there to show that he hates magic even more. If you translate from Bizarro to English. So I think he went there thinking magic would kill him. And it had the opposite effect, and that's when he got supercharged. And then once he got supercharged, that changes everything for him. Because again, you flip the page and you get that great thing of it no tickles. And that beautiful look of that full page spread. Again, when you get full page spreads that you're like, that should be a poster. I still have those moments right here, this page, with Bizarro standing all charged up, and he's kind of got almost a classic Superman pose of the one leg kicked up, and he's flying, and you can almost hear the dun 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 as he's standing there, powerful, really powerful, and no tickles. I'm like, ooh, this is looking cool.
Yeah, it was captivating throughout. And you flip over to 6 weeks later, and talk about the artwork on this spread is really, really sharp. And I love the whole line about Lois whispering, marry me, Man of Steel, marry me all over again. I love the idea that DC has allowed this marriage to continue on, and that writers have found clever ways to keep going with that, because that to me is much more intriguing in the Superman story. We pulled that for a while with New 52, where we were like kind of rebooting the character and taking away the marriage that way. And I always wanted it back. I always loved the marriage of Superman and Lois. And I think they found a great way to keep these characters moving forward with this storytelling. I have no qualms if they do, they tried All-Star Superman and stuff like that. And if they at some point in time do that kind of line again, where they do a Superman, a full reboot, that's cool. As long as they keep this continuity going, I love this. I love that this puts writers in a place where, okay, the man's married, he's got kids. Let's tell this story from that standpoint and have that drive part of his motivations here. And I really am enjoying that aspect of Superman's storytelling, just because it's something that I think is special about the character.
Yeah, and one of this opening sequence, again, the opening sequence with Superman, again, I love just showing when they show just how much the super hearing is a part of his life.
Oh yeah,
how much he's doing it, where he's listening into all the different accidents, no injury, it's too late on that guy, and still he considers dropping in to lend a hand just because of how hard it's going to be on the people who are working on this guy. Superman's presence may help them out, and that kind of thing. But then Starlab reports comes in, Bizarro, he's like, okay, gotta take care of this. I like how, again, it shows the prioritizing of Superman. And whenever, people from work or friends or whatnot ask me what superhero powers, if there was any superhero you could be, which one it would be, I always want to say Superman just because it's Superman, but I know the super hearing would get to me.
Yeah. Hearing
all those people and not being able to help all of them, that would drive me insane. And I love when they show just how he handles this stuff. It's one of if Superman ever were to turn evil, it would be because of something like this, where he just couldn't help everybody, and he finally said, "Forget it. I'm going to start eliminating crime and just start taking a more active in you'll get that darker version of Superman, and it'll start from this light, this positive reason of he's sick of not being able to help everybody, to turning into, because again, once you cross the line, you keep going and going and going. That's why the Batman and Superman are so locked on the no kill code, because once they cross that, and there's been multiple stories out there that have told a really cool version of an emperor, a warlord, Superman conquering and this and all that cool stuff out there. But, that's one of the things that I always loved. And just a little bit right here, just re-emphasize, some of the stuff I love about Superman. And again, it's tied into this Bizarro story. So going into a Bizarro story where I was like, it's a Bizarro story, but I'm like, oh. And right from jump, I was like, this is going to be kind of interesting. And then you do another classic Superman thing, so the writer knows who Superman is. He gets some of the coolness of Superman. And then you flip the page again, and it's him and Bizarro interaction. I was like, this book really did a brilliant job within the first couple pages of me telling me, you're going to like this. You're going to like how I handle Superman, how I handle Bizarro, how I handle the, just the general, DC universe, Metropolis. So I think they did a brilliant job with this just in the beginning saying, you want to keep reading. And again, within a couple pages, I was like, yes, I want to keep reading this.
Jason Aaron's been doing that. Did you read that Batman Otherworld yet? Or Batman Offworld?
Offworld, yeah.
Offworld, sorry. I'm saying, I'm glad I corrected that. Batman Offworld. That's a good book. Jason Aaron's been doing a lot of work over at Marvel and in independent work, since his time at DC. It's great to see him back at DC doing work like this. He's also going to be taking over Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles coming up soon. This is just a great writer. The pacing is perfect. You were mentioning the super hearing piece, and I was thinking through that, and I think this is the best of what comics do, right? You pick up on a little thing like super hearing, and it's both here, and it's also featured in the Superman book, where we'll talk more about that when we get to it, but to the point of super hearing, imagine like having that power, and think about the number of things that people say when they're venting that they don't really mean, right? We all vent them out. We all say things during that time when you're angry or frustrated or whatever. You don't mean them, but he would hear them. Imagine you're friends with Superman and he overhears you saying something. You know what I mean? The responsibility of being able to try and somehow differentiate between that and the true feelings of people, and to be able to maintain friendships and understanding, it's a power that sounds really cool on paper and is to a certain extent, but it's also like horrid. You would literally, you're able to hear everything. So being able to control that and being able to put some form of fence around that through concentration is got to be a really, really hard thing to do. You're right. It's a power I wouldn't want to have, because I think you'd be constantly, how wouldn't you be paranoid? I mean, because you would hear somebody say something and be kind of like, what do you mean by that? There's a privacy aspect of, what do you tell people? Like, okay, I heard you say that. I mean, we're talking about like superheroics and stuff like that and how you use it for that purpose. It's not, this dude deals with this in day-to-day life. Everywhere he is, he can hear everything. And also has the power to see everything if he so chooses. That's crazy. Superman's an interesting character to talk about because of that aspect. It actually makes you feel more like this guy is probably the only guy that can and should have these powers.
Yes. It would be difficult to, again, if anybody else had these powers, just how horrible things could turn. And just, again, we've seen on alternate Earths where Superman is evil, and you see just how nasty things can get if Superman ever turns bad. So it's, it's, again, I love this sequence. And again, even the opening with him and Bizarro, because Superman's like, hey, let me help. Like, I know come for talking. Superman only want to fight. He catches himself saying, I got to talk backwards. And I love just that the way the look on Bizarro's face, like, you think I'm smartest man alive. You know Superman. You know so much. You think I'm the dumbest man alive. You don't know Superman. You don't know so much. Bam! And he backhands him. And not only backhands him 25 million miles. So I'm like, whoa, that's a hit.
The thing that ends up happening through this is Superman like accrues a lot of battle damage, and people notice it. Like it's not just like people are shocked by it in the sense that Superman rescues them and his blood is on them, and there's comments about that, which I don't remember the last Superman story aside from Death of Superman, where, like, I don't even, in Death of Superman, I don't know that was even mentioned, like, in that capacity. This story, it was. I was, like, sitting here like, yeah, that would be an odd occurrence, Superman rescuing. Usually that's pretty clean experience with Superman. It adds a different level to this particular fight, and the danger level, tiny things that writers and artists do to add a sense of increased danger. I loved the flight through the solar system, from the corona of the sun to the moons of Jupiter to Saturn's rings to Pluto. All of these things, just added this sense of how fast they were moving, because these things were happening in real time, right? So they're just zipping through the galaxy. Yeah. And that stuff was really, really awesome.
Well, and it's Bizarro doing it. Bizarro is super, super powerful beyond anything Super has experienced. So when Bizarro drops him off on Pluto and flies back to Metropolis, it takes Superman a lot longer to fly from Pluto back to Metropolis. And it's time. It gives Bizarro time to do all his magic, his mojo.
He was strategizing. It's not very often that you see Bizarro strategizing. He was casting a spell and knew he needed time to do it. He deliberately dropped him on Pluto so he could do that. That's not something we're used to seeing with him.
This was a definition of strategery, by the way.
It is a it's Bizarro.
Yes.
I agree. I actually will 100% back you up on that one. The sequence with Lois and Jimmy was really great. I'm enjoying the way that they're interacting with the world in general. I love Clark being Clark again. The secret identity being back in place. I don't need everybody to know that Clark is Superman. Lois knowing it is important. Some people close to them knowing it is, and some of the heroes knowing it is, pretty important. But this idea that everyone else doesn't know again works really, really well, I think, in this story, because Jimmy's interaction is that he's friends with Superman, but there's still that sense of he's friends with Superman. It's this Superman is this kind of bigger being. And I really like the way that's playing out in the comics. And the way it was highlighted actually subtly in this story. There's a lot of things this story does subtly where Jason Aaron's very well aware of the fact that there may be people jumping on this issue because of the fact that he's on it. And he's telling a story that explains the rules of this world for anybody who's coming on board and refreshes it for the people that have been here for a while. This is what our playing field looks like. These are the characters that are here. This is how they would interact with this particular story. And that was great. This Bizarro battle, I'm one of the areas where I'm with you. I'm more of a Bizarro fan than you are. I find, but over the years, if you were to ask me, what is it you like about Bizarro? Usually I find him funny. This was a very, very different Bizarro story. I found him very dangerous here. I'm not saying I don't find him that way normally, but there's always this sense of Superman's going to find a way to defeat him, and there's endearing quality to Bizarro. This Bizarro does not. I'm sad for this Bizarro because of everything that he's lost, but I don't find him endearing. It's the opposite. I find him dangerous. Yes. I'm sympathetic to what he's gone through, and I feel that piece, but this is the first time where I'm like, really? I can't remember a Bizarro story where I really found the character to be dangerous. This magic piece and what he's doing here, and the fact that he's strategized this, and left which we'll talk about, left a bonus surprise in what he was doing. This is a very different kind of Bizarro, and I honestly can say I would be very happy to read another Bizarro story after this with this kind of Bizarro, because this kind of chaos coming into your world is woo. I get the motivation. He's lost everything and he is angry. And I could see him being angry at Superman where he's like, listen, not only am I this ugly, horrid antithesis of what you are, but I had a home. Now I've lost that. You've got everything I would want. And I hate and resent you for it. And I could see that being a thing. And that part's awesome.
Well, big time. And again, it's the notion in, the stuff that, as you said, this is a very dangerous Bizarro. And again, that's part of the reason I really liked him. But I do like the fact, because I never once even remotely thought, Bizarro would become this super wizard because of he's the opposite, and they went with that. And even I like that it was Olsen when Olsen and Lois are watching the fight play out, and they're putting the pieces together. Wait, Bizarro's casting magic, and even Olsen says, "Hey, with his, him being the opposite, he could be like a super wizard." And Lois is like, "Take him down quick, Smallville." That little whisper that she knows Clark's hearing her. And it was just a really cool sequencing. And then just, again, as you're jumping back, so this creative team knows how important, the different people in Superman's life are. Yes, now we're getting this check showing Superman how it is important to him to save people, to be Superman, to save the villain even. Mm-hmm. And I love just how this whole time Superman's still trying to fight to save Bizarro. And Bizarro's like, "No, you don't get it. I'm the opposite of you. You're a good man." So he's not, and it's just like, oh, this is brilliant. This is a true evil version of Superman. They threw out the comical side of him and really showed us how nasty Bizarro could get. And I'm like, that's cool. That again, this is a Bizarro I like, because of all the massive destruction and death that he has brought onto the world.
It's one of those pieces where when you see Superman in situations where he is rushing to a situation to save others, but he's in pain. He's in agony. Bizarro's been beating him up. He's bleeding. He is hurt. His costume's not just torn. The man's bleeding. He is in pain. This is something that, we're used to waking up with aches and pains and things like that. That's not a norm for Superman, right? Superman's had it in his storytelling, and it's always something you admire because you don't get to see it very often. In this case, he's still fighting his way through, still fighting to be Superman, and like you said, save the villain. And I really liked seeing that aspect. And Bizarro knew this was it. I think, it's funny. I did not, the first time through, read this as Bizarro wanted to die. Yet, in rereading the story and actually hearing your comments on it, I can see coming to that conclusion that, this is, he was not only looking to die, he had a plan of leaving behind a present in his death, that in many ways, resurrecting Bizarro World? Making the world in his own image, making Superman in his own image out of spite.
The question is it Bizarro World or Bizarro Metropolis? Because I think only Metropolis got affected by this.
Okay.
Because the reason here I'm going by, when you start flipping through the panels, where people start transforming, you can see like an energy shield. The energy circulating around the city, kind of in some of the images. So I don't think it's the world.
Well, the next issue, the tagline is "City of Bizarro."
Yeah. So I think his spell only affected Metropolis because that's what Superman loves.
Right.
And you can see Superman kind of turning. Lois, Lois is full-on Bizarro look, and all the people are full-on Bizarro. I'm like, oh, this is going to be kind of cool. Because, again, how does Soup fight that?
Yeah. Wow. This is a great first issue.
Big time.
Jason Aaron did a really, really great job. This initiative of just bringing the superstar writer in to take a good look at how we're telling stories in Action Comics. Woof. If you're going to tell your first Superman story, this is certainly the way to do it.
It is a big time. Yeah, this is definitely a hit it out of the park.
I've been watching, obviously besides the animated series, I've been still doing my Smallville rewatch and really going through and enjoying that. So I'm very Superman happy at the moment. And this certainly was a welcome addition to my Superman enjoyment right now.
There it is, going into that tunnel.
Our next discussion is on Superman issue number 10. The writer is Joshua Williamson. Artists are Bruno Redondo and Caio Filipe. Chayo Philippi. Colorist is Adriano Lucas. Letterers Ariana Mayer. Cover artist Jamal Campbell. Variant covers by Lee Bermeo and Bruno Redondo. 125 variant cover by Lyrics. 150 cover, variant cover by Mariko Kolak, Colak. Assistant editor Jillian Grant, editor Paul Kaminsky, and of course, Superman was created by Cleveland's own Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster by special arrangements with Jerry Siegel family, and Supergirl is based on characters also created by Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster.
So we're both guilty of doing this, so please know I'm not picking on you with doing this. It's more of a general apology overall. One of the reasons why we shout out creative teams on the show is for the purpose of just pointing to everybody, make sure you're paying attention to like who is creating these books, because these are people you can follow and support in their work as they're going forward, especially if you really enjoy them. I know I'm guilty of this, adding vowels that aren't there.
Which one I do that on?
Oh, redundo. There's no U anywhere in there.
Oh, sorry.
But I'm not. I want to be very clear. I did not want to say. I'm only saying that because you asked. I'm very guilty of doing that too. So my statement is very general versus a finger pointing at you. I'm doing it for my introduction to him as well, and also explaining why we do that. One of the reasons why we do this is to just note the fact that I love reading these characters. I love reading these stories, but there are creators that are doing them. As a kid growing up, I butchered so many names of people. When I'd hear their names, I'm like, I do it with favorite authors too, from novels. Where I thought I knew the pronunciation of their name, and then you hear it, and it's like, wait, that's the and my biggest fear is to be at a convention, trying to get something signed or get a sketch, or maybe there's times where some of the writers actually have scripts or things. They're getting some form of signature on a comic or something, and I butcher their name.
Yeah.
I am so cautious of, unless I've been at a panel where they're introduced or something like that. And even sometimes that's done wrong. I don't ever want to insult them because of the fact that they're these people that have told these amazing stories that I love. And that's really the purpose of these segments. This run, I love Joshua Williamson. This goes back to the Flash run with Joshua Williamson, which I thought was just an outstanding run. And since then, I've just been really just on board with anything this writer does. This Superman book, 10 issues in, it's a great, great read. And it has one of the things I loved growing up about Superman, and Batman as well, actually, was the adventure-style stories, where every so often they would tell some kind of wacky, outlandish storytelling. Superman as a Western. And it's a Superman-style Western, so throw in there all the wackiness that you get with Superman. I was grinning ear to ear. This book made me feel like a kid again. It didn't take anything away from the serious nature of the story. Didn't take anything away with what's going on with the larger Lex Luthor story that we've got going on. But I loved and smiled through every element of this issue. This is the kind of stuff that comics can do because they're serialized, and the fact that you're getting these books monthly, you can tell stories like this. It's something when you do a long-form medium, every so often it's like, well, what's something we haven't done? How about a Western? We haven't done that in a while, and there's some cool way we can put Superman and incorporate in this piece. I love that because you get so much storytelling, you have to play with the medium. This is playing with the medium, and man, I don't know if you feel the same way I do. I loved, because he was sort of depowered too, and couldn't wear any form of like armor protection or anything like that because of the fact that we don't want to alert people that I'm, from another time and those type of pieces. I really liked every rationalization for how this issue was playing out. This is my kind of story.
Yes. Oh, big time. And again, before we did this recording, I had to actually go through and do a lot of reading on Action and Superman to get caught up, because it's been multiple months since I actually read a comic book, much less get ready to talk about it. So it was kind of neat in the Action and the Superman reading like 4 issues back to back to back, especially with the Superman stories, that great Lex Luthor story and the chained story that happened before this, where you really do see Clark and the family aspect of it. Mm-hmm. The super family is a really cool thing they've got going on right now. And whether it's in the main story or even in some of the backside stories that they've had in some of the past issues, where they really do show who is the family, what's involved with the family. And, I liked how they had that really high energy moments, which brought him to the past. So this is kind of like, when I first started reading this, I'm like, okay, this is a nice little reset, kind of just pause. But at the end, you realize, oh no, that story is continuing, and it just hit 11. So I loved how this came through, where we got this great Western story. And everything you were saying, I'm nodding my head going, oh yeah, this is awesome. Especially because it has an appearance of two of your favorite characters back in the Western days.
Mm-hmm.
But I knew you'd love that. Mm-hmm. But then we get to the ending where you're like, oh, guess what? That big, massive story that was happening, it's still happening. And it just got worse. Good luck. I love this.
Yeah, and that's part of the fun of it. To me, it's not just the stuff that was going on in the past. It's also the stuff that was going on in like the present day with Supercore and Lena. And I like that this story has got so much going on in the main story that I'm just as intrigued by that as I am the lush landscapes. The artwork really shined on this, though. Like that opening Western where he's writing the letter, Dear Lois, and you see them like riding the horses across the landscape. It's him with the ghost.
Yes.
And I love her on a ghost horse. You get to see that in the background. I mean, just so... It felt like a classic DC Western with that, too, because it added like that kind of ghost-like supernatural element in it. And her even being out in the daytime, which isn't the norm, and him referencing that piece. This character feels like someone out of Marilyn Moonlight, feels like someone out of classic comics. But I love that this is something that's being done with a modern storytelling spin to it. It just works.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And the other thing I did love, you do see, because you talk about this letter to Lois. Mm-hmm. And again, he's writing this letter, and we've seen, if you ever saw the movie Back to the Future, you saw how you can get a letter from the past very easily to the present. And
yes.
Part of me was wondering if we were going to get that kind of moment, or if this was just Superman writing. Because we've seen him do that kind of stuff before when he's away from Lois. Even though he can't talk to her, this is his way of communications. But I did love the sequence after they found those people who were killed and they realized the lasers and like, hey, this is somebody who could get us back home. But before that happens, Superman's got to bury the dead. He's got to let them rest in peace and all the honoring and that. And again, that's a subtle Superman thing that he would always have to do. He would always have to take care of that. And without powers,
Jim.
It's just a man digging, on his own.
Yep. Sorry. And that's actually where I was going. Thank you. That's because I agree with you. It's just a man digging on his own because he didn't have the powers. I loved that part of it. That was a very, very good thing to do. This idea of there being a DC villain, a time-traveling villain that is there, somebody that Superman would know, was kind of cool as well.
Yeah.
I liked having, it was cool to see that aspect of the story. Because he recognizes him, too. He goes, hold your horses. You look familiar, partner. And him being the one to reveal that that's Superman that's out there and him on the flying horse in the past. I love when they put in little nuggets like that. That stuff was cool.
Yes. Oh, yeah. And the fact that the saloon is Bebo's Saloon did make me cheer because I'm like, oh, okay, cool. Again, I don't know if that's a long-running thing that Bebo's family has been in Metropolis since the founding days, or if not. But whether it is, I love the fact that it was Bebo's. Bebo, I don't know.
Tomato, let's call the whole thing off.
Exactly.
Yeah. But Terra Man was a nice addition to this story. I liked the Superman battle. Here's the interesting question. Superman did not know that he was powered again when he took those bullets, did he?
I don't know.
Because she asks him that later in the story, and he never reveals it.
Right. And I think part of me thinks... I think he knew he could take it, because he knows when he's feeling strong again. He knows when he's got the full powers.
Okay.
So I think he felt it, and he knew, okay, I'm good.
It was still cool to see. I loved that. I loved that. I liked that the question was he didn't come out and explicitly answer it to her.
Right.
Which led me to go, was there some kind of question? Did he maybe not know? I don't know. That part was great. I actually liked her role in this, Marilyn Moonlight's.
Yeah.
In the fact that she stopped him from getting away with his equipment because they would have been trapped there otherwise.
Yeah. And prevented him. He's now trapped in the past himself. So now he's got to figure out a way to get out of the past, which is kind of neat. I like seeing that's a great punishment for him. You got a future guy, lock him in the past where he's not going to be able to really do any much more danger. Yeah.
Well, and Superman even says, though, that he's got enough time travel allies that can go back and get him. So, he has that plan. But his idea was clear. Let's leave him here for a while to, settle up his debts now. Yeah. And that's Superman being like a man of justice. He looked like a lawman as he's walking down the street, and I liked that aspect of you could almost hear the Western music playing as he's leaving. Kind of like the end of a Clint Eastwood movie or something.
Yes,
and I thought that was pretty darn cool.
Oh, big time! And you hear that. You hear that 100%, man.
I like that he called up Marilyn Moonlight for being an inspiration to herself. She sees a young her and kind of does the nod over to her, kind of recruit, which that's an interesting sort of timey-wimey thing where you're like, are you, perhaps influencing your own future decision-making? And we get her story finally. Some of her really cool backstory direct from her as far as what happened. And I want to see exactly who is behind her being back and why. Mm-hmm. Who do you think it is?
Well, the initial gut is always Lex.
Yeah, that's mine too. Still,
but I'm like, I don't know. It's like I don't know.
There's a part of me
that's too obvious.
Well, I almost think though, is Dr. Farm and his crew a little too obvious too? I don't know. A part of me does think it might be Lex. I don't know. We'll have to see where this all goes. I'm curious to see how long range the plan is for the Supercore story, because we're 10 issues in, right? So is this something that is meant to be a 12-issue run? Is it something I'm talking about this story arc, or is there more to this story that's meant beyond that? It's a very, very interesting piece to see.
Yeah. Now, the one thing I do wonder is, okay, so we get Superman shows up at LexCorp, and Lena's there to warn him, hey, you got to run now. And you get the full Lex Luthor Revenge Squad. So Chains is released. You got the other two there. Then you got somebody who's sitting there in Lex's armor. Now, obviously, it's not Lex because it's the Lex Luthor Revenge Squad. Who is that person? Who's in the Lex Luthor armor?
I don't know.
Because, again, the Marilyn Moon Knight, the initial gut was always Lex Luthor brought her back. But then I'm wondering, it wasn't Lex, it was somebody else. And like you, I agree, Farm and the other guy are kind of obvious, or also seem two obvious choices. We know it wasn't Chains. Maybe whoever this new player is, maybe that's who brought her in. Or maybe this is going to be a completely different story. I don't know yet. But it's one of those things I do really like how this is playing out. Because, again, we get this great Western story that plays out. We get this really cool stuff going on with Superman and Moonlight, and they're going to be partners, and he's going to help figure out to maybe let her spirit rest. And then you flip pages, and boom, the Lex Luthor Revenge Squad is again back in full force, but even more powerful now that Chains is released. Sammy Stryker is now released, so you've got this serious power force going on against Superman. So I'm like, what's next? Come on, man.
I'm wondering that person's got to be somebody we know, right?
Yeah,
because otherwise, why blot them out like that? What, Corbin, maybe Metallo?
Could be. He'd be a good call, but again,
wait, that's me. I don't want to be clear. That's me guessing, not me sitting there saying I know it's Metallo. I'm saying this just quickly. Look, okay, who would benefit from being in the armor and that type of thing? But you're right. I guess to the point of what you said earlier, is that too easy? Is there somebody else that's in there? That person's blotted out for a reason.
For a reason, right? So we don't know yet. And again, with Corbin, I wouldn't say no. I would say no to him, just because the way his story ended. The last time we saw him with him and his sister and Soup helping him out and all that kind of stuff, and it was really Farm and them who was doing all the nastiness to him, not Lex. So he wouldn't side with them against Lex. because it was proven that Lex wasn't the bad guy messing with his family.
Sure.
So again, it's like, I don't know who is in that armor. And the way that he's drawn, even, it looks like a male bald head. And you're like, but Luthor wouldn't be part of the Lex Luthor Revenge Squad. Unless he's sneaking up on them and they don't realize it's him. I don't know. This was a really awesome story, and I loved going on. And then you get this last page, you're like, oh, next issue is going to be awesome. And it's Lena Luthor versus the Revenge Squad. So now, obviously, Soup's going to be out of commission because of all these guys. So Lena Luthor has to step up, and she's got to do what she does. So I'm curious to see what the next issue is going to be like.
And that's something that is super awesome. These books are just making me really, really excited to read Superman. There's some great storytelling going on right now in the Bat books. I'm really enjoying what's going on over there. I'm getting a very different storytelling in Superman that has got me equally engaged and equally pulling me through. I'm glad that we talked Superman this episode, just because of the fact that we haven't talked about this character in a while. And it's a mistake just because of the fact of how good this book's been. I really want to point people to, if you stepped away from Superman for any reason, this is a great time to jump back on. Because there's some really awesome storytelling going on here that just feels like classic, feels special. And a big part of Dawn of DC has been really not just, it's been focusing on obviously bringing back concepts to DC, but also really reimagining how we're dealing with our main characters as well, to get back to the core of what makes their storytelling cool. And boy, this has been fun.
Yeah. Oh, and it's funny because, like, the Superman title, the Action Comics title, I had multiple issues of each one I had to read through, and they just read, going boom, 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 going back one to one to one was a fun thing. And this Superman story that they've been playing out, I like the continuation of the numbers, not rebooting, restarting numbering sequences just because, I don't know, it's a weird thing I have. But I like how they did this because, again, part of it is, sales on issue 1 are a lot better than issue 800, just because that people feel like this is a good jumping on point. They know, okay, this is a jumping on point. And this story has been a great jumping on point in that it gave us a nice, powerful story where there was back information that you did have to learn along the way, but they did a brilliant job of keeping you up to speed who all these different people are and how the different parts, play out in this. Especially the super family where you've got the two kids from Warworld, you've got John, you've got Connor, you've got Kara, you've got all of this super family getting pulled in, and then you got Ki-Han, over from China, who's now officially a part of the super family, how he became part of the family. They've told some brilliant stories in these last 10 issues of just, continuing building on what was there. But again, it sounds and it made it seem like, yes, this is a fresh start on point. So purchase issue 1 and continue going on, or purchase the trades, and you can see this, story playing out. I'm really loving how they're doing this and what they're doing with Superman.
So here's the interesting piece. And so let's take a step away from the comics for a second and talk one more thing Superman related. So Superman goes public domain, and Lois Lane go public domain in 2034, followed by Batman in 2035, the Joker in 2036, and Wonder Woman in 2037. Interesting that these characters are going to go public domain, because what ends up happening is kind of what you're seeing now. So Mickey Mouse just went public domain, and there's going to be like a Steamboat Willie horror movie that's on the deck and things like that, which means that opens up the possibility now, with certain rules, that you can use concepts from Superman, the early concepts, in 2034. Obviously, there's going to be things that DC did later and that's going to be interesting, the tricky navigation is what exactly is public domain in 2034. What are your thoughts on others being able to create quote-unquote Superman comics, Superman movies, potentially even a Superman TV show? Like, I don't know how far that extends and what they're able to do at that point in time, but certainly they're going to be able to take elements of that and create other stuff. What are your thoughts?
Yeah. I'm worried. I am worried about that because, again, we're seeing that we just talked about two great Superman stories that people who really understand and get the concept of what makes Superman so great. We're going to get people out there who have no idea what Superman's about. And they'll just create some super powerful guy and they'll be like, "Hi, I'm Superman." It'll be like, "No, you're not. You're an idiot who, you're ruining this." And I'm worried about that kind of stuff. Just like, you mentioned the Steamboat Willie horror. That I don't like that idea of doing that as well. And I'm like, but again, they're not saying Steamboat Willie is the horror the horror. It's just a person wearing a Steamboat Willie mask. Yeah. And it's, I don't know. I am worried about what's going to happen to Superman, what's going to happen to all these characters. Because, there may be people out there who will tell some great stories. There may be some independents out there who've always wanted to write a Superman story and never could. Now they'll be able to. And those are the kind of people who will benefit from this. And those are the kind of things I'm looking forward to. But then there's going to be some hacks out there.
To your point, that's where we'll benefit too.
Yeah. No, big time. Again, if you get somebody who really knows, who understands the character, who understands what makes this person such a great character, creating a story, I'm all for that. I'll read that. But we're going to get a lot of hacks out there who should never touch the character, who should never be involved with Superman, Batman, or Wonder Woman. And they're going to create stuff. And that's the part that I'm worried about.
Yeah, at least to anything, is there going to be a danger of oversaturating the market? I think, at the end of the day, I will admit I don't fully understand when that happens. Like, what do they actually have rights to? And that's a piece I'm trying to read more articles on. Like, what will actually expire at that point in time? Like, what will they actually be able to pull from? Because there's, like, at what point in time do you sit there and say, this is not, at this point, this became a different character. This character evolved, and those aren't public domain. So there's elements of that, because obviously, specifically Superman and Lois Lane, when did Perry White come into existence? I'd have to take a look at all those pieces. When did Jimmy Olsen come into existence? Superman at the early stages couldn't fly. It really was leaping tall buildings. Yeah. It looked like flight, but it was not flight. Does the concept of Superman flying, would that be able to be used? I'm guessing no, right? I don't know. That's the part I am not a copyright law expert.
Yeah.
But it's intriguing to talk about because 2034 is not that far away. I mean, we're talking like 10 years from now. So, believe me, there are people who are, that's the piece that I think it's really relevant to talk about it. You better believe there are people right now that are already planning and preparing for 2034 because of the fact that they can't, like sitting there saying, "Oh, this date comes to fruition, I can enact these type of things and take advantage of this one." Same thing. I think more strangely, this is not diminishing Superman. There's got to be even more doing that with Batman, right?
Oh, big time. I think Batman will be I think there will be people who will take advantage of this with Superman, but I really do think you'll have more Batman stuff.
Yeah. Just
because of the physical appearance of Batman. Because I think one of the things that becomes free is the likeness of the character.
Yeah.
That's why you have the Steamboat Willie horror where he's able to put on the Mickey Mouse mask.
Yeah.
And wear a Mickey Mouse head. Versus because it's now available. I think you're going to get people wearing the cape and cowl. doing similar stuff like this, where maybe it'll be a horror, again, going with a horror film, where the person puts on a bat mask and, and that's how he hacks people up while wearing it. And it's not actually Batman, but it is the likeness of him. Or you could see someone wearing a Superman shirt that has the very clear S logo, doing some horrific stuff. Whereas before it was protected. Because of likeness and the trademark of that, you can't put that in a movie, without permission. That's the kind of stuff I think you're 100% going to start seeing. Which, again, is it going to be I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen. And in 34, I'm assuming we'll still be doing this. Because I'd like to think we'll still be doing this, and we'll talk about it then.
Spinning with great speed, the Flash creates a protective vacuum around himself.
I would like to remind everyone about our show voicemail line. It's 1-440-388-4434 or Dr. Norge on Skype. We love having you part of the show. RagingBullets@gmail.com is our email address. You prefer to contact us that way. We are proud to be part of an amazing Facebook group community. I want to thank everyone over there, especially in our hiatus, for keeping it going with news and updates on what's going on in pop culture and in DC Comics in general. It's the place I go to first to see what's going on. So I want to thank, we've got a lot of top contributors over there. And I want to thank everyone for taking the time to post content there for our listening audience and the community overall there. RagingBullets.com is our show website. You'll find news about brand new episodes as they're being released. We feed that into Twitter. We also feed that, or X, and we feed that into our own Facebook fan page. We are also on Threads. You can find us pretty much so if you go to the About Us section on a lot of gaming platforms and social media as well. So feel free to connect with us in the way that is most convenient for you. We are sponsored as always by DCB Service and InStockTrades.com. Mr. Segulin, what is going on over at DCBService.com?
Absolute Batman Arkham Asylum hardcover, 50% off, only $50. And Absolute Batman The Dark Knight, The Master Race hardcover, 40% off, only $75. Thank you, DCBS.
Over at InStockTrades.com, just a reminder, you can find the Batman Trade Paperback Volume 6 Abyss in their Deals of the Week. $16.99 regularly, 50% off, only $8.50. Be sure to check out their regularly for deals so you can save some money. Thank you, DCB Service and InStockTrades.com for supporting our show. Reminder, you can find me twice a month on Is It Jaws? Paul and I do movie reviews using the Jaws 1 through 4 scale. So if you are a movie fan, please feel free to check us out over there. Our next episode, Jim and I are going to be back, and we are going to be talking about Kneel Before Zod, continuing our Superman chat, and Penguin. We will see you then.
Bye!
All right, you guys. Are you ready to sing your song?
I'd say we are. Yeah, let's sing it now.
Okay, this should be fun. Now get ready for your cue. Okay, Sean?
Okay.
Okay, Jim? Jim? Jim!
Okay. Raging Bullets time is here. We talk about what we hold dear. Comic books and TV shows. Superheroes and their clothes. Justice League and so much more. I just love Green Lantern Corps. We talk about the books we've read with spoilers straight ahead.
Okay, fellas, get ready. That was very good, Sean.
Naturally.
Jim, you're a little flat there, so be careful. Jim? Jim? Jim!
Okay. Justice League and so much more. I still love Green Lantern Corps. DC Comics are what we know. The Raging Bullet Show. DC Comics are what we know.
Excellent job, guys.
Let's sing it again. Yeah, let's sing it again.
No, that's enough. Let's not push it.
Push it. What is that? Yeah, what are you talking about?
No, I didn't mean anything by that.
I think
Jim,
it's right
Jim,
I don't know
how long do you want the song to go?
Look, it's our production.